You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Good Thursday morning and welcome into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. I am your host, Ryan Hickey. Thank you so much for tuning in on this gorgeous Thursday morning, which is a little bit bittersweet, which I will explain in just a little bit. But first and foremost, obviously, we hope everyone is safe, practicing social distancing, washing their hands, and at least not going stir crazy or really starting to get riled up as people work from home now for really the second full week that all of America, or most of America, I should say, is working from home. So we hope that at least you're keeping entertained, you're not losing your sanity just yet, and hopefully at least everything from home is going smooth. Everyone, again, is staying safe and healthy. And as I'm sure as you heard, we can all work our way to hopefully flattening this curve sooner rather than later and getting back to our way of living that we're used to being. So we do welcome in on this Thursday morning to the Morning Boys with myself, Ryan Hickey. Like I said, it is a bittersweet Thursday because if you are a big sports fan, well, one, you wouldn't be listening, so I'm sure you know what the date is. But two, if you're a big baseball fan, today, March 26th, should be opening day. Being a Mets fan myself, Nationals at Mets was going to be an exciting game to go to. You had Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom on the hill. I was supposed to go to that game. I saw Christmas present. Unfortunately, obviously, that will have to wait at least a month. Middle of May, I mean, is at least some projections what MLB is saying. We'll see. That's even a little bit. Had some interesting messages out there in terms of scheduling, in terms of how they're approaching scheduling. So I kind of want to dive into that. But we have a fun and exciting show. Again, not just some sports as well, but I have an interesting topic I just want to kind of get your thoughts on. And really, obviously, love any kind of feedback that you have, either commenting on Facebook or on Twitter or even shooting just me a personal message itself. But hopefully, at least this question I want to throw out there can get a lot of different answers, a lot of different responses. So I'm curious because obviously, with no sports, you kind of have to think outside the box and at least kind of reflect more than just obviously react to what games are going on. So at least with that said, I was hoping to at least get a reactionary comment and kind of a question that we can kind of go back and forth on throughout the show is if you could change the outcome of one sporting event, what would it be? And not just, I wish my team won the World Series last year, or wish, if you're a Giants fan, they won the Super Bowl last year, I would change, that outcome. But just like a game, a pitch, an inning, a play, a shot, just one small, again, outcome, or even the difference of a game that could lead to possibly different fortunes for your team. I have mine. Unfortunately, it's a painful one. I revisited last night as I was thinking about this question just to kind of remember what it felt like. And I thought, despite it happening, just about 15 years ago, I thought, I can handle it. I'll take a look, and I'll be honest, watching it over again really brought back a lot of the feels, a lot of the pain. And again, 15 years later, I'm starting over it. So I'll give you my thoughts, or at least the one outcome I would change in my life personally. But again, I'd love to get yours. Either comment if you're watching on Facebook